0415 hours. Gulf of Oman. The General Quarters alarm cuts through every compartment of the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, 100,000 tons, 4.5 acres of flight deck, a crew of 5,000. The single most expensive and capable conventional military asset the United States operates anywhere on Earth. And the words that follow it are not a drill. Swarm inbound, all hands to battle stations. The tactical display in the Combat Information Center shows what the duty officer's voice cannot fully convey. Hundreds of simultaneous radar contacts emerging from the shadow of the Omani coastal cliffs at 15 nautical miles and closing. The contacts are not aircraft. They are not missiles. They are a combination of sea-skimming suicide drones flying at 10 meters above the wave surface and fast attack boats with stealth composite hulls, launched simultaneously from a single platform that U.S. intelligence had been searching for across the Gulf for 48 hours and had not found. The Shahid Bajari, a purpose-built Iranian drone carrier, $555 million of floating launch infrastructure disguised beneath the radar return of a commercial vessel, had been sitting against the Omani coastal cliffs using active jamming equipment to blend its electronic signature into ground clutter since the previous morning. Its position 15 nautical miles from the Lincoln strike group had been chosen with precision, inside the engagement range of its weapons, inside the minimum reaction time that the Lincoln's defensive architecture required to fully sequence its response, and behind a geographic feature that prevented the E-2D Hawkeye's radar from painting it cleanly until it moved. It moved at 0415. Within 90 seconds of emerging from the cliffs, the Bagheri had launched more than 50 Shahid 136 loitering munitions and a formation of armed September 25001 reconnaissance UAVs from its flight deck, and deployed 50 Ashura-class fast attack boats from its flooded stern compartment. The attack boats carry Nazer-1 short-range anti-ship missiles and are built from radar-absorbing composite materials. At 90 kilometers per hour, they cover 15 nautical miles in 10 minutes. The electronic warfare suite across the Iranian UAV formation activated simultaneously with the launch, a coordinated S-band and X-band jamming effort that hit the Aegis radar picture across every destroyer in the formation at the same moment. What appeared on the tactical screens was not a clear threat picture. It was noise, hundreds of false contacts layered over real contacts, ocean wave clutter amplified to the same radar return as a boat carrying 500 kilograms of explosives, the jamming signals themselves indistinguishable from valid threat tracks at standard processing thresholds. The acoustic picture was worse. 200 outboard motors running at maximum RPM generate a broadband noise floor that saturates passive sonar across the engagement area. The strike group's underwater surveillance, the capability that would normally detect the Ghadir-class midget submarines that entered the formation's perimeter in the opening minutes of the engagement, was effectively blinded by the surface noise before the sonar operators had finished their first assessment cycle. Iran's opening move had achieved exactly what its architects designed it to achieve. The Lincoln strike group had been stripped of its long-range precision advantage and forced into close-quarters combat in conditions where the technological edge of every system aboard, Aegis, sonar, electro-optical sensors, network integration, was being actively degraded simultaneously. This is the threat architecture that Iranian planners spent 7 years developing after studying every documented U.S. carrier strike group engagement in the post-Cold War period. The conclusion they reached was straightforward. American naval technology wins at range. The sensors, the missiles, the networked fire control, all of it operates most decisively at distances where U.S. weapons reach the adversary before the adversary reaches effective response range. Close that distance through surprise and the advantage compresses. Close it through saturation, and the processing overhead of managing hundreds of simultaneous contacts overwhelms the decision cycle faster than the kinetic response can be sequenced. The Bagheri operation was designed to close both gaps simultaneously. What Iranian planners had not fully modeled was the second-order consequence of forcing the Bagheri to increase its transmission power to maintain swarm coordination as the engagement progressed. That consequence would define the outcome of the entire engagement. But that comes later. If you were the Lincoln Strike Group commander at 0420 hours, radar degraded, sonar blinded, 15 nautical miles of closing threats, what is the first order you give? Defend the carrier with every kinetic system available, or accept short-term damage to find and target the source? Leave your answer below. 0430 hours. USS Spruance and USS Frank E. Peterson. Junior accelerated to break formation, establishing a defensive screen 10 kilometers from the Lincoln's hull. The 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun systems on both ships opened fire using proximity-fused airburst rounds. Rounds that detonate above and around the target rather than requiring a direct hit, creating a fragmentation pattern across the wave surface that shreds the fiberglass and composite hulls of fast attack boats without requiring the precision fire control solution that the jamming environment was making difficult to achieve. The Mark 38 25mm automatic cannon systems on both ships engaged drones at closer range. RIM-116 rolling airframe missiles launched from deck launchers in succession against the Shahed 136 formation, the missile's passive infrared and anti-radiation seeker heads cutting through the electronic warfare environment that was defeating the radar-guided systems. 4F/A 18E Super Hornets off the Lincoln's deck descended to low altitude, using their M61A 220mm Vulcan cannons to sweep the boat formation with tracer fire. MH-60R Seahawk helicopters worked the lead boats with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, targeting the attack craft's wakes as thermal signatures. 12 Iranian attack boats were destroyed in the first 8 minutes. The radar picture began to clear. Commanders assessed that the combination of precision fires and close-range area suppression was breaking the attack's momentum. They were looking at the expendable layer. The boats and drones that the Lincoln's defensive systems had engaged in those 8 minutes were the forward element, designed to absorb kinetic inventory, generate the burning wreckage that would spread black smoke across the engagement area and blind the electro-optical sensors that supplemented the degraded radar picture, and consume the ready-service ammunition that the destroyer's close-in systems needed for what came next. 0442 hours. From behind the smokescreen generated by its own burning decoys, the Bagheri activated the second layer. Kara-class combat UAVs carrying Majid heat-seeking missiles climbed from near the wave surface and targeted the MH-60R Seahawks flying low for boat engagement, the helicopters that represented the strike group's primary close-range reconnaissance capability. 2 Seahawks were hit. Both made emergency water landings. The strike group lost its most effective low-altitude eyes at the moment the engagement was transitioning from the decoy phase to the main attack. The September 25001 armed UAVs, which had been flying approach profiles consistent with surveillance rather than attack, altered course and executed kamikaze dives against the SPY-6 radar arrays on the Spruance's command tower. The impact destroyed the starboard array and created a 90-degree blind sector in the Aegis coverage, a gap that any subsequent wave of threats could exploit by approaching from that bearing. Then the sonar operators on the Spruance registered the acoustic signature that overrides every other priority in a combat information center. The Ghadir-class midget submarines that had entered the formation's perimeter during the acoustic masking of the opening phase had closed to engagement range undetected. They launched Hoot super-cavitating torpedoes, weapons that generate an air bubble around their body to reduce hydrodynamic drag, achieving speeds of 360 kilometers per hour and defeating acoustic countermeasures because their supercavitation signature does not match the profile that standard torpedo defense systems are calibrated to detect. The Lincoln executed a hard turn, a carrier heeling 15 degrees to bring its stern perpendicular to the torpedo's projected track, presenting the smallest cross-section. The maneuver worked. It also stopped all flight deck launch operations at the moment the carrier needed aircraft airborne. The formation was now operating with 2 helicopters down, 1 destroyer with a 90-degree radar blind sector, and a carrier that could not launch aircraft. The Bagheri's architects had not needed to sink the Lincoln. They needed to make it stop operating as a carrier. For approximately 12 minutes at 0445 hours, they had achieved that. 0450 hours. The strike group commander stopped engaging the swarm and targeted the source. The P-8A Poseidon, that had been at 30,000 feet performing its assigned anti-submarine mission, was redirected to electronic intelligence collection. Its broadband sensor suite began building a frequency map of every emission in the engagement area. The Bagheri's satellite communication links, the UAV swarm's command and control frequencies, the data links the attack boat formation was using for coordination. 2 EA-18G Growlers from the Lincoln's air wing carrying AN/ALQ-249 next-generation jammer pods were airborne within 6 minutes of the order. The targeting requirement was specific. Do not jam the entire electromagnetic environment, which would degrade the strike group's own network as severely as the threat. Identify the single satellite uplink frequency the Bajeri was using to maintain swarm coordination and inject false position data into that channel at a power level sufficient to override the legitimate signal without broadcasting the jamming effort's existence to the Bajeri's electronic warfare operators. The P-8A's AI processing isolated the target frequency from the surrounding emission environment in under 4 minutes. The Growlers focused their jamming output on that channel. The effect propagated through the swarm within seconds. The GLONASS position data the Shahed 136's navigation systems were receiving from the Bajeri's command link shifted. Not to noise, not to silence, but to a coherent false position that displaced the Lincoln's location 5 kilometers from its actual coordinates. Drones that had been tracking toward the carrier altered course and flew into open water. Fast attack boats that lost the command link's coordination signal began moving independently. Their individual boat commanders, without the formation picture they needed to maintain the encirclement geometry. The Bajeri's response was predictable and fatal. To reassert control of the swarm, its operators increased transmission power on the command uplink, the standard response when a communication link is degrading. Increasing power made the Bajeri satellite uplink the brightest emission in the electromagnetic spectrum of the Gulf of Oman at that moment. It was visible on every electronic warfare receiver in the strike group simultaneously. The hunt had inverted. The Bajeri had revealed its exact position to the formation it was trying to destroy. 3 fast attack boats already committed to their attack runs and no longer receiving updated navigation from the command network continued toward the Spruance on autonomous terminal guidance. 2 were shredded by the Phalanx C IWS. The 20mm Block 1B mounts autonomous tracking and firing sequence, engaging both hulls before they reached 500 meters. The third, burning and structurally compromised by Phalanx fire, impacted the Spruance's hull just above the waterline on inertia. The explosion punched a hole in the hull plating. The ship's watertight compartment design contained the flooding. The Spruance remained operational. The AC-130J Ghost Rider gunship that had been holding outside the engagement area descended to medium altitude under FA-18E escort, the fighters flying low to draw the attention of Iranian air defense systems while the Ghost Rider positioned to engage. The fire mission was precisely constrained. Mission kill only. Disable the Bajeri's fire control radar and propulsion without detonating the munitions stored in its launch bays. The 30mm cannon and 105mm artillery pieces aboard the AC-130J engaged the Bajeri's radar arrays and stern propulsion machinery with laser-guided precision. The hull remained intact. The launch bays remained sealed. The ship's ability to generate a second wave ceased to exist. 0530 hours. The smoke cleared across the Gulf of Oman as dawn light reached the water. The Bajeri sat dead in the water, its electronics destroyed, its propulsion gone, its $555 million investment in swarm warfare doctrine transformed into a stationary target. Around it, charred UAV debris and waterlogged attack boat remains extended across several square kilometers of ocean surface. More than 20 Iranian Special Forces personnel aboard the surviving boats, recognizing that the command infrastructure had collapsed and that American firepower was sequencing toward their remaining assets, threw their weapons into the water and raised their hands. U.S. commanders ordered SEAL boarding teams rather than kinetic engagement of the surrendered personnel. The Bajeri was not sunk. That decision was deliberate. A floating disabled drone carrier is evidence. A sunken one is a debris field. The Lincoln resumed flight operations. The Spruance began damage control and remained in the formation. The 2 downed Seahawk crews were recovered from the water. 15 sailors across the formation had been wounded. None had been killed. Now account for what each side gained and lost. Iran's expenditure, the Bajeri and its entire carried weapons load, 50-plus Shahed 136 airframes, 50 attack boats, the Ghadir submarine's tactical position and operational security, and the entire swarm coordination architecture. Frequency parameters, communication protocols, positioning system integration that now resides in the P-8A's electronic intelligence database and will be distributed to every allied navy operating in the region. Iran's achievement: a hole in the Spruance's hull above the waterline, 2 downed helicopters, 12 minutes during which the Lincoln could not conduct flight operations, and the documented demonstration that a $555 million drone carrier can create significant operational disruption against a carrier strike group at 15 nautical miles. That demonstration is the part the Pentagon cannot dismiss, regardless of the tactical outcome. The Bajeri concept worked as designed until the moment its command uplink betrayed its position. A version of this system that maintains swarm coordination without a centralizable uplink frequency, distributed autonomous guidance, mesh networking between individual drones, onboard AI that doesn't require continuous command link contact, would not have provided the electromagnetic beacon that ended the engagement. That capability is developable, and Iranian defense engineers now have the complete operational data from this engagement to inform the next iteration. The era of unchallenged carrier operations in the Persian Gulf has not ended, but the operating assumptions that governed carrier strike group doctrine for 30 years, that the Aegis network's layered defense provides insurmountable advantage at any approach range, were stress-tested in the Gulf of Oman in ways that will be studied in every naval war college for a decade. The Lincoln Strike Group won this engagement. The question worth examining is whether the margin of victory, one hull hit, 2 helicopters, 12 minutes of degraded flight operations, represents an acceptable cost for operating a carrier in range of a platform like the Bagheri, or whether the swarm doctrine has permanently changed the risk calculus for carrier positioning in confined waters. And if the answer changes how carriers are used, pushed further from the threat, operating at ranges that reduce their strike aircraft's effectiveness. Has the Bagheri achieved its strategic purpose regardless of the tactical outcome? Leave your analysis in the comments.